So I was just watching the debate, Jordan Peterson and some communist guy, I forget his name. It was pretty neat. I kind of understand where the communists are coming from a little bit, just in trying to equal things out. I think there's a better way of doing it. Even if we were to stay in our shitty system, we could do it just by regulating profit in big industries and stuff. Somehow try to regulate the profit. If they make so much profit, it has to get back into the staff. Have to get a raise at a certain point or something like that. So that minimum wage couldn't be used as a standard for places that are careers, you know. Though the whole thought of it's all just crazy. Our system just needs to be more fair and open. A person, let's say that I was orphaned here, just whatever. I'm 20 years old, and you know, whatever, you got kicked out of your family. Let's just say that, for whatever reason. Who cares? Or you left your family for whatever reason. And you wanted to start a new farm, so you found a piece of land somewhere that nobody else was using, just empty. Cut down a few trees. You make a shelter. Start a life. Start getting things going. Make a little farm. Seed some things. Whatever you have to do to make your money. And then, you know, you'd have a good struggle your whole life, for sure, no doubt. At least 20 years. You'd be working hard. Let's say in 5 years, you'd figure yourself to be set up enough to go and find a wife, whatever. Or whatever circumstances happen to find yourself a wife. And then you start a family. During that time, obviously your work would increase, but it would also decrease because you'd have a wife now to help, but you'd also have a kid to look after. So you'd have to feed them, but she'd be doing a lot of the work with the cooking part side and this and that. And anyway, balance out. And then as that kid got a little older, obviously then your workload would drop for a little while until the kid got a decent amount older, enough that you'd have to build a second home, right? And expand your farms at some point. During this whole time, you'd have to obviously not expand huge, but you'd need a decent sized garden. And then let's say you had just chickens, just because people don't need all these other animals. And then either a donkey and a plow, kind of stuff like that. But really, nowadays, you would go more towards technology side. And a person doing that should be able to make enough money to, in a good society, a fair society, that person would make plenty of money in order to go and buy, you know, a tiller, plow, tractor, over the years, you know, and improve their house, get better tools. You know, if you started with just an axe, you could get a chainsaw. You know, if you were using chisels and to make lumber and stuff like that, and having to hand plane it, you could have a planer, or you know, whatever, right? Buy the things that you needed, or alternatively, work with your neighbors. If you had like some baby chickens, extra eggs, You could work with your neighbors, or work with your neighbors when they need to plow their field. You're there to help them, and they come over and help you build your new house or put on an extension to your garden. And people love to help each other, and you really feel a sense of accomplishment and pride when you help somebody with something like that they're going to expand their family with, and they're really setting themselves up and they're trying to better their lives. And you wouldn't even ask for them to come to your house to help you back, because you would get such a feeling of accomplishment from helping them. But they would understand that they're going to get that same feeling of accomplishment from helping you, and that's how communities are built, and that's how roads are built and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff as well. You know, when you need to get to the store and stuff like that, well, so does your neighbor, and so does your other neighbor, and so does your other neighbor. So if you all chip together, and I got a tractor, and you got plows, and you got horses and stuff, or what, you know, whatever, everybody's got equipment, and you got 5 sons that are all able and working, you know, we all come together, and the road goes in quick. I've built roads, just me and my dad, like miles long in the woods, and they've lasted better than the government roads last, just because we put a little work into it. Well, in the spots that we put work, there's some spots where we didn't put any work, you just drive over the roots, but anywheres that we put in culverts and all that kind of stuff, especially my work, it's maintained, it's perfect still. It's been years, 5 years or something like that, and it's roads way out in the woods that you can only get to 6 months a year or whatever, because it's on an island. But anyways, when people come together, infrastructure happens. And so all this government needing money, oh, we'll do your infrastructure, blah, all this, we really don't need that shit. That's just them scamming money, because they're just middlemaning something that would happen naturally. I live in the city, and I'm in like kind of the slums. So around here in the wintertime, only every other block gets the sidewalks plowed. So my first year living on this block, I noticed like school kids walking up and down the middle of the road to get home from school every day, because there wasn't sidewalks anywhere on my 2-block stretch, right? So I just took it upon myself to shovel the 2 blocks. It's not that much work. It didn't add a lot to my life, and there's tons of people like me. Tons. There's people that are way nicer than I am, and they're the happiest people, right? So if we all kind of had that understanding about life, then all that kind of infrastructure shit would just naturally happen. We wouldn't need government intervention in our lives so much. We don't need all that. Really, the same has been proven about the crime. Crime rates only go up as living conditions go down. It's people that don't want to be in the society that we're in that end up being criminals. If given a choice of something that they could put their pride into that built society, or to just go and build themselves somewheres, just go build yourself somewhere. Who cares? There's tons of land. That's a lie that the world's overpopulated. The world's mismanaged. It's not overpopulated at all. All of us could have 1,000 square feet. All 7 billion people could have 1,000 square feet of Alaska, and the whole rest of the world could be empty of mankind. We'd only need to, well, in 1,000 square feet each, basically, if you built tiny homes and stuff like that, you'd put gardens in your lawn, you wouldn't need anything. We wouldn't need to be anywhere else. Gardens would obviously have to be greenhouses and stuff in Alaska because it's cold. But, I mean, there's space. There's tons of space. We could all fit in Saskatchewan or whatever too, or, you know, just as easy, or whatever. We could all, and it would be crowded then, for sure. But don't let them fool you into thinking that our Earth's crowded. Our Earth's mismanaged. We're letting greedy psychopaths run the world in a way that they think is profitable. Like, how many water cars have been invented in my lifetime? There's been like 3 or 4 that I've heard of. 2 like recently, and they get squashed quick. There was 3 African girls, schoolgirls, just made a generator that'll run 6 hours, 800-watt generator, I think it was. I'm not sure about the wattage, but it would run for 6 hours on a gallon of human urine, right? So, and produce clean water. I'm sure you'd have to clean parts inside every once in a while, but Stan Meyer's car, you could just change the spark plugs in any motor in the 90s and change the gas, and it converted all cars into water cars. He wanted to save the U.S. military from being dependent on foreign oil. He said God showed him how to do it, and that he was going to give it to them, and they ended up just assassinating him after a while because he was too loud. He died. He got poisoned at a Rothschild dinner. His brother inherited everything, but he's not loud. He's just quiet. He just went into the woods and disappeared or whatever. And now that invention's kiboshed. Anyways, and then they changed car design. They took away spark plugs and put in coil packs so that his invention won't fit with the coil pack. It won't work anymore. So they kind of made it obsolete unless you own cars from the 90s or whatever. So anyway, maniacs running our earth for maniacal means. That's all it is. And I don't know why we let them. Anyway, happier earth. Like I was saying, a large part of your schooling in that society, once you were of an age, you'd obviously want to go to, you'd be homeschooled a bit, living with your mom and dad out in the woods. That little kid that's growing up from the 20-year-old who went out on his own, that kid's growing up, and now, let's say he's gone to school, so now he's like a 10-year-old or whatever, so he's starting to learn some stuff and starting to be able to do some stuff. He's going to start working with his father in the field, which would be, important to see how well he takes to it and all that kind of stuff, and make it fun. Don't make it, obviously a good father would make it fun and just not make it, you have to do this, but come with me, son, and we'll do this together, kind of thing. And then see where the kid's driven, and obviously if your kid's driven to a city life that he, like an inventor or whatever, he wants to do this factory stuff, you could just let them go do their thing. So maybe that's where this 20-year-old came from, was his dad was a city folk, and he said, no, Dad, this isn't what I want, I'm going to go do the other life, and he went into the woods. That's a good example. And then that kid wants to go back to the city, but obviously he's only 10, so he's got to get to 18. So you would have another kid in the meantime, maybe even a couple, and then, but you could make sure that kid got more schooling, right? Because whether it be private or public funded, I would think that we would basically privately fund schools. There would be an erection of the schoolhouse in each town, for like elementary schools, and we'd all chip in for that and pay the teachers for that, and that would be a community effort. But after that level, if you're going to just start driving the same things into a person, it might as well be what they want to do. there's this broad information that we learn in junior high school and high school is yeah, it is great and whatever, but it's basically mostly learned already by the time you've hit grade 7. Right? So at a certain level, you'd say, okay, well, is this kid really taken to school? No, they're not. It's not their calling to be whatever, an academic. They can just as easily go and work in the field and spend the rest of it. So now you got that son too, let's say, and daughter. And both of them, because the majority don't want to go live in these cities and do this lifestyle, 40 hours a week, blah, blah, blah crap. Anyway, 80-hour a week, all that stuff. There's people that are driven for that, and they're going to go to that, and they're going to do their thing, and we should encourage them because that's great. It's going to drive society as a whole, right? And they do need labor force too, right? But that's cool, man. That 20-year-old, while he was building his farm the first 5 years, would obviously have to go and do day labor and things like that too. And a lot of people would be day laborers or choose that labor life. There's a lot of folk who just like being in the city too, right? If you were raised in the city and it's what you know and it's where you're comfortable, maybe you just want to get an apartment and live a normal life and go on vacation once a year and do, a normal city style life, and that should be an option as well, right? But it should be a simpler option. It should be easy to choose which option we prefer. Because I think the option that a lot of people prefer would be to just get away from all these cities and do the simpler community life, where, like an Amish, basically. Anyway. And they would help each other. Because the technology still need to eat and all that stuff. So these us other lifestyle, we still need the new tractors and stuff. So we would be obviously selling some of our food off in order to upgrade our equipment or whatever. Though most things we would be self-sufficient. But obviously there would always need to be that surplus of food sold off every single year for each community, which would pretty well maintain the city folk. Now, obviously, city folk would also have to have lawn gardens and work for themselves as well and feed themselves. I think now, or whatever, that would work. I'm sure that would all work itself out because, like I said, if I was growing a farm full of wheat, obviously the guy down the road's growing a farm full of this, and that guy's growing that, and this guy's growing that, so I take my wheat, trade it to the guy who needed feed his chickens, and I get chicken, and then now I got chicken and wheat, so I can trade that to the baker for flour, and then to the butcher with the chicken, and get myself, now I got beef and chicken and wheat and baked goods and sugar as well, the next thing, so that's where industry would come in, right? And then so I'd have to go to the city to sell off some of our, in my case, wheat, right? In this scenario, I guess. Though it could be pot or it could be pumpkins or whatever, it doesn't matter. Or you could grow a variety of garden, and the possibilities of that are endless. If you're good at it, you're good at it. And it's necessary, it's needed. Anyway, at that point, the 20-year-old, he's now, let's say he's like 35, and he's got his 3 kids, and the oldest one is now, 15, 16, but he's not interested in the farm stuff so much. He's off doing his own school stuff, but you're still getting some work out of him, and he helps with the younger kids a lot. But each of the younger kids would both be getting enough older that they would start being of a good help too, as that oldest kid now is going to start to sail away from the nest because he's wanting that city life. So he's going to start to really disappear a little bit more and more over the next year or two, until probably by the time he was 16 he'd be gone most of the year, and then just come home, stay in the guest room or the kid room, of the main house kind of thing. But at that point, you would have to start. You got the year of of all three kids, plus your wife is not pregnant anymore, and you got a year to really build that second home. Your barns are all good, so you'd start building your second home, and then that's obviously the neighbors would be interested. They'd start coming over and helping out and stuff like that. And you'd have that. Now you got two homes and a barn built, and your first son's gone, but your second kids are really young to already have a home. So you could actually hire somebody, an apprentice, for 5 years, and they would be an indentured servant living in the smaller house and helping plow the fields. But they would get free room and board, and they would get free food, fed every day, and they would learn how to run a farm, manage a farm, do all the work on the farm and stuff like that, as long as they're attentive. And then at the end of the 5 years, whatever, you got your two houses, and your son is now, or daughter is now old enough to be married off and move into that second home, and you had your indentured servant for that 5 years, plus your other two kids were growing up and getting into their teenage years, and let's hope that both of them were kind of family oriented and stuck around. So you'd actually get a third house and a big expansion on the field, or on the gardens, or on the pastures, whichever it was that you wanted to garden, whatever it was that you wanted to specialize in, or if you wanted to just expand on your, you're growing wheat and chickens and now you're going to do cows as well, or whatever, depending on what your kids were into, would be your second choice, right? Like if let's say it was your daughter that was your second, and she's into beef or milking or dairy, whatever, you expand to her farm being a dairy farm. Your youngest son would have the servant quarters house, which would be the second house you built for him and his wife to grow old in, and then by the time, you would pass away, that youngest son would actually get to take your house, and his kids would move into the smaller home, while the two families expanded the two farms in opposite directions from each other to make one bigger farm with, say, 5 houses and 2 barns or whatever, because you'd have to have houses for each of their kids now. But then it's over. All the work's done for generations and generations. Just maintain the houses and keep having enough kids to fill them. That's it. And those are pretty easy tasks. And then your time could be spent on passion. If you're a musician, artist, inventor, biblical, whatever, you could work into these passions. Obviously, you'd still have work every year of your gardens, your farms, your horses, your waterings, your all that stuff. But most of that work would be spring and fall. And and in the fall, in the spring and the fall, you'd have a big workload because you'd want to cut enough wood to keep yourself warm in the wintertime. And really, all winter, you kind of feed your animals, feed yourselves, wait for the snow to melt, and then in the spring you got a lot of planting and field plowing and big workload that would happen, and then all summer you kind of watch things grow, water, do whatever, harvest certain things along as you go, maybe go out and pick wild mushrooms or something, whatever, whatever you wanted to do to fill in your days all summer, go swimming. And then build dams, water reservoirs for your cows, things of that nature. Go help the neighbors with if they're putting up a house or someone's putting up a barn or someone's doing, the whole family could gather in, or just members of the family all go over and help them out for the day, whatever. If other people's crop comes in and yours isn't in yet for another couple of weeks, you go and help them harvest theirs, and then when you got to harvest, maybe you get a whole bunch of extra hands, or if not, whatever, who cares if you don't get extra hands, you helped your neighbor, maybe they're busy, they might have had to harvest this year and they were building their second home before their first kid moved away, so you had to go, so you figured out, I've been there, I'm going to go help him, make it easier on him, and I don't care about getting help on my harvest. I'll get, God will provide. I'll get my harvest done. I got my kids. Once you're set up, you just want something to do a lot of days, so you would just go do things. But you wouldn't be forced like we are now into these 80-hour weeks in order to own your possessions and things. And now you say, oh, what about power, blah, blah, blah. Well, people dealt with that for years, and we've got way more technology now. It's easy to go off the grid. Super easy. And if we were in a utopian future, there would be Tesla coils everywhere, and they just grab static electricity out of the air, convert it, and run your freaking house. And you don't need, it's totally clean energy. Free, clean energy for everybody forever, right? It's just, that stuff is repressed. But in the future that we need to imagine, that stuff's not repressed. Everybody knows about all that technology. We're opening up the pyramids and lowering the frequency of the earth. We're making technology that works the same ways that our technology works, but in synchronicity with nature. Because I'm sure there's a way to make a phone that doesn't raise the frequency of the earth and screw with people and make them sick and give everybody cancer. There's ways to make microwaves and stereos that don't bleed radiation to make my little radiation tester just beep off its friggin' mind. TVs, this is when they're unplugged. You can unplug your microwave, unplug your TV, unplug your big stereo amplifier, and go over to them with the radiation tester, and they're just, it freaks out in both readings. Because there's, mine's got VPNs and APM, whatever, anyways, and it reads a bunch of different things, and it like 40's danger, and they're going up to almost 400, 380, 395, jumping up, unplugged. Can't imagine what they do running. Anyway. And we got all that crap right in our homes. Every one of us does. Well, most of us do. I don't anymore. Anyway. There's ways to do this, all this stuff that's actually beneficial and healthy. But again, it's not that we're here. It's how we are. It's not that we exist, it's how we exist. Mankind is run in such a way that everything's generating profit, and the care of the earth and the care of the future and the care, not even a care for that. There's no thought for that, because it doesn't work out financially, right? Or for power. When you're addicted to power, it's like being addicted to anything else. When's a crackhead have enough crack? When's a heroin addict have enough heroin? When's a sex addict had enough sex partners or whatever? If you're addicted to something, I'll never have enough weed. My can right behind me. You know, when you're addicted to something, you're not going to just be like, oh, well, I'm content now. I got enough. I got enough to give me a week or whatever, the rest of my life. Doesn't matter. You never have. These people are super addicted to this stuff. So they're going to just drive for more and more and more and more and more and more and more. It'll never stop. You can't satisfy them. It's not like they're going to get to some plateau of power that they're going to be happy. Our current leadership, current rulers. So we need to, and that kind of power, money, to anybody is going to corrupt, right? So that's why we need to not have the government so at all, really. We need to, not that we don't need them at all, but we don't. We need them very little, and it's not, I don't know. Yeah, it is government, like elected officials from each town, but in these smaller type communities, obviously, that many, right now, it would work just like the Amish does, where they come out with their leadership and say, but it's spiritual leaders, and they are kind of picked through the people. And again, it would be something that you would notice in a child. Look, this kid leads all the other kids. Let's really push morals on him and stuff like that, and help him with his leadership skills, and make sure that he's gonna grow up in such a way that he's going to love God, or I say God because that's where science truth has led me to believe in. But I realize that, like almost all of our religions are like brutally similar. So we're really close to having it right anyways. So I'm just going to say God, and I'm going to talk Christian God, Jesus, Hebrew kind of God, I guess. But I realized that the evidence is outstanding, I guess, to a lot of people. And but again, in the utopian future, things wouldn't be hidden from us. Right now, if an archaeologist was to do a dig, they have to ask their